Fishing is a very popular sport here in the state of Pennsylvania. In 2009, there are more than 1.4 million fishing licenses sold in the state. Fishing can be enjoyed at lakes, rivers, streams, and ponds throughout the entire state. Today, you will hear several different anglers tell you about their experiences fishing here. You will hear about different types of lures and baits and their effective uses for catching fish. And lastly, you will get to see some of the knowledge gained from the interviews and the presentation on lures and baits put to use at some of our state's bodies of water. So sit back, relax, and learn something about fishing in Pennsylvania.
Smallmouth bass is what I usually go for, or perch out here, sometimes crappies too.
Usually trout,
Okay.
and then bullfish, carp,
Trout and bass.
crappie.
Whatever bites.
right.
I'm just out for the fun of it.
I try to target basically anything. Maybe walleye is my favorite one to try to catch.
I usually target bass. I usually try to use live bait or some sort of rubber worm, whereas in the lakes I'll probably fish more lures. Rubber worm is probably my favorite, or a jig, like a white jig.
For bass, I use a weightless Texas rig, which is a zoom worm with a bloodshot hook, Castmaster for out there in the deeper waters. They're also really good on trout too.
Trout manual or twisters.
We usually, when we go fishing on the river, a lot of stuff like salty tube, salty spiders. A lot of salted stuff works well in fresh water with smallmouth bass and such.
Worms seem to work the best.
Spinners and night crawlers.
Penns Creek usually, back at home in Selinsgrove. Penns Creek and Susquehanna River. It's not bad here at Walker Lake. Like going fishing in New York. It's fun up there too.
Here at Walker Lake, back at Failer Lake, Middlesworth Pond, the kids like to go there. There's a stream over here by the covered bridge, back behind the Beavertown Game Lands.
Okay.
It's a nice spot in there. A lot of the local guys call it the 12-foot hole.
Middle Creek, that's about it for trout.
Meadow Creek, and for bass once in a while, maybe up to the river.
In my dad's pond is my favorite place, but any lakes, I do like to go on lakes.
If you're really interested in fishing, a great place to learn more about fishing in your area is to go to your local bait and tackle shop.
Hi, my name's David Lilly, and I'm the owner-operator of Blue Heron Sports.
Okay, Dave. Could you tell me what type of lures are sold the most here in your store?
We cater to primarily two different groups of fishermen. That would be the trout fishermen and the bass fishermen. I think that's probably equally divided here. They're both very popular species.
Okay. Are there certain types of lures that you suggest to your customers to buy?
We'll generally put it into a couple of categories depending on where the person's fishing. If they're going to be on the river, it's going to be a different lure than possibly if you're going to go to Lake Chillisquaukie, which has a different type of fish and different fishing conditions. If you go to one of the local trout streams, you're going to find that that's an altogether different lure also. So we'll give a couple of choices for each area. We can never be exactly sure which lure is going to work at any given time. There are a lot of variables, size, color, but we'll give you the top 10 and let you choose which one you think might work on a given day.
Okay, so when fishing in the river as opposed to a lake, which type of lures work best in the river?
Well, the primary fish in the river is the smallmouth bass, and they feed on one of maybe 3 or 4 things: crayfish, other minnows, hellgrammites, stone caddies, which are bottom dwellers, and then bugs. They'll eat flies off the top of the off the surface of the water. So my recommendation to anybody fishing in the river is to have something that covers each of those categories: a crayfish type lure, a lure that maybe duplicates a minnow, or a bug that you can float on top of the water. All of those will catch you fish on any given day.
All right, now what would you say works best in a lake like Lake Chillisquaukie?
Lake Chillisquaukie has a population of largemouth bass, and they also have something you don't see much of in the river, and that's frogs. So frogs work quite well on Lake Chillisquaukie, as do minnow imitations and bugs. But with the grass cover over there, you can catch some big largemouth on a frog imitation.
Okay. Besides Lake Chillisquaque and the Susquehanna River, where do you tell your customers to go fishing to get their best catches?
We're blessed with several what's called impoundments, flood control projects in central Pennsylvania. Hunters Lake, Rose Valley, Lake Jean, Briar Creek over in the Berwick area, Walker Lake, Failer Lake. Any one of those is probably more dependent on what your time schedule and which direction you have to be traveling. They're all 20 or 30 miles from here, within easy traveling distance to catch some fish. They also carry a lot of other fish in all these lakes. There's crappie bass, muskies, walleyes, catfish. So there's always something to catch in one of these lakes.
All right. Now, do you have a lot of customers that'll say they target muskies or northern pike?
A small percentage. Muskies are an elusive fish. They're at the top of the food chain. They're a little harder to catch. And being at the top of the chain, there's fewer of them. They are extremely aggressive, and if you can find them, will eat a big bait. But there's not as many of them as catfish, for instance, which there are thousands of in the river. Muskies are territorial, so you won't see too many of them in a given day. You can go all day and see a half a dozen muskies, so you have a few chances, and if you don't get lucky and hook one, then you're going to move on to fresh territory.
All right. What basic advice could you give to local fishermen?
Be willing to try different things and go to different places. Be aware that fishing is best early morning or late evening when the sun's not so bright. And go out to enjoy yourself. Don't worry about catching a lot of fish. Have fun while you're doing it. You'd be surprised how many more fish you'll catch if you're not trying too hard.
Hello, I'm your host Isaac Sowers, and welcome to the part of the show where I teach you a little bit about lures. There are literally thousands of different kinds of lures out there on the market. So we're going to narrow it down here a little bit today and tell you a little bit about the basic types of lures. The first thing when buying lures is you want to find out at the lake you're fishing at what the bait fish are. Now, if there's a lot of largemouth bass in the lake you're at or in the river, you'll probably want fish that look like minnows or small little panfish like crappies or bluegills. Now, the first main type of lure I'm going to be talking about are crankbaits. As you can see, there's a lot of different variety and shape and size of crankbaits. They're designed to look like different types of fish and other types of animals like crayfish, which would be great for using in the river, as it's a great home to crayfish there, and smallmouth bass in the river love to feed on them. The first type of crankbait I'm going to tell you about is a diving crankbait. As you can see here, it's designed to look like a bait fish. This one's designed to look like a perch in particular. As you can see, there's a lip on the front of it. A lot of crankbaits have lips like this on it. They're designed so the water runs over them and it makes the bait dive. The longer the lip on it, the further the crankbait's going to dive. A lip this size will probably make the crankbait dive between 6 and 10 feet. Whereas if you get a bait like this, if you can see it's a really small lip there, it'll probably only dive a foot or two. As always, there's crankbaits designed to look like different types of minnows. This one is a double jointed crankbait. It's designed so the tail will move back and forth in the water to make it look more lifelike and hopefully get you more hits from fish. Another type of crankbait is the lipless crankbait. They don't have any lips on them like the ones that dive, hence the name lipless crankbait. So they're designed, throw them out in the water and let it sink a little bit before you start to reel it in. And when you start to reel it in, the water and your reel speed will make little rattles inside of the crankbait move back and forth. It'll make a sound that attracts the fish. All right, the next type of lure we're going to be talking about are topwater lures. called topwaters because they stay on top of the water and don't dive down underneath the surface. This one here is called a jitterbug. It's designed to be a frog imitation. They make other kinds too to look like other types of bait fish. But this one skims across the top of the water, and the metal lip here causes a disturbance on the top of the water. It makes it flutter about and make a splashing noise, which attracts fish. Make it seem like there's a real frog or a different type of fish splashing around on the top of the water, and it will help get you strikes from fish so you can catch them. Another type of topwater is a hula popper. This one sits on top of the water straight up and down like that, and your line is tied here, and you want to jerk your rod up so it makes a popping noise. The lip here will catch water in it. It'll make a popping noise when you pull the lure out, and that attracts fish like the same way the jitterbug does. Like the splashing and stuff makes it seem like a fish or a frog or something's moving around on top of the water. If you ever go night fishing, you'll want darker colored lures because fish can't see any better at night than you or I can. They rely on their sense of the splashing in the water and shadows, so a dark lure works best. When it's light outside and really bright, you want a bright colored lure, as the sun will hit that and make reflections, and it also attracts fish. Another type of topwater are weedless topwaters, like these two frog imitations here. As you can see, there's no hooks dangling down on the bottom like there would be on the other topwaters and crankbaits, so they don't get stuck on the weeds as easily. These frogs here, they're great to cast into lily pads or really grassy areas where you couldn't cast other types of lures because they just get stuck and you'd lose them and make you mad. But a great thing about them is they're heavy, so they can cast far, and there's two hooks on the back here. The way it catches fish is, say a bass or something bites down on it, the hooks pop up like that and it'll get caught in the roof of their mouth. The hooks are really easy to remove from there too, so it'd be great for catch and release. The next type of lures we'll be talking about are called spoons. A spoon is nothing more than a piece of metal. It's designed to take on the look of a small bait fish, such as a minnow, a shiner, whatever. They're designed, you can see a little curve in it. It's designed to wiggle and wobble through the water to make it look like a small bait fish. It really does if you ever see them move through the water. Again, there's a million different kinds of spoons. You even have weedless type of spoons like these two Johnson Silver minnows. Some, just plain color, and others are designed to look like bait fish. As you can see on the back of the lures, there's these pins here that almost touch the hook. That's what keeps the weeds off of the hook when you're gone through the water. They are, however, not 100% foolproof. You'll still get snagged on weeds and stuff, but it does help. One of my favorite types of spoons is the Little Cleo. It's small and it gives a nice glisten in the water, reflects the sunlight, which attracts fish such as bass. I've actually caught two of my biggest bass on this really tiny Little Cleo here. The red actually gives an effect of blood, which also attracts fish. When you think blood, you think sharks like blood, but actually all fish like blood. So it's great for catching fish, and it works a lot. The next type of lure I'm going to be talking about is the spinner bait. As you can see, they come in a variety of colors like anything else. When the spinner bait moves through the water, these blades here will spin around like that. There's a couple different types of blades. This one here is called a willow leaf blade. It's called that because it looks like a leaf from a willow tree with its long, narrow shape. Willow leaf blades are designed to reflect sunlight and to attract fish like that. Another type of blade is the Colorado blade. which are smaller and rounder. It's like this spinnerbait here has a willow leaf and a Colorado blade. The Colorado blade is designed to make a vibration in the water like the lipless crankbaits were with their rattles. Here's a different spinnerbait with a larger Colorado blade on it. As you can see, the wider shape will, when the water runs over it, it'll make the blade spin around and cause vibrations in the water to help attract the fish. A lot of fishermen sometimes will put an extra hook or with a piece of bait on it at the end of the hook that's already on the spinnerbait to help you get more catches. I don't do that in particular because I don't think it makes that much of a difference, but if you want to try it, you can go ahead and see if you can catch more fish that way. Okay, the next thing I'm going to be talking about are called swim baits. They're a newer type of lure on the market. They're all designed to look like bait fish. This one here is designed to look like a perch or a shad, and this one here is designed to look like a crappie. They're all, great at catching fish. They're soft, plastic, rubber, and they really give a lifelike look when they move around in the water. They're one of my favorite types of baits to use because they're really lifelike, and you can even put some bass attractant on it, which gives it a scent like a real fish too. Let's see. The next type of lures I'm going to talk about are soft plastics. As you heard in the first segment of the show, soft plastics work great in the river. These are called salty tubes that you heard people talk about. How you fish these, it's great to put a metal weight inside of them so they sink down to the bottom. There's an opening underneath these things that look like tentacles on an octopus to make the tube hollow. You can shove a weight up in there so they sink to the bottom, and then put a hook and run it through the middle and have it just sticking out a little bit. They give it an effect of crayfish or a small minnow swimming around at the bottom of the lake or river or wherever you're fishing at. You got other types of soft plastics like these that give an effect of a look of crayfish. Now, again, they're great to use in the river where the crayfish habitat is booming. There's crayfish everywhere. All the smallmouth bass love to feed on them. So what you want to do is you just take your hook and put it through and let it sink to the bottom. You can put split shot weights on your line. That'll help it sink to the bottom. And you just twitch your rod a little bit to give it a little bit of movement, and hopefully you get strikes from the smallmouth bass in the river. Plastic worms are a very popular kind of bait. Again, it's great to put weight on your line so they can sink down to the bottom of the lake or river wherever you're fishing at. And again, you just twitch your rod a little bit and have the worms move around so they can try to catch fish. There's also attractant that you can buy that smells like night crawlers, so that'll give a little scent to the fish in case you're fishing at night and the fish's level of visibility is very low, so they can use their sense of smell instead of their sight sense to find your lure so you can catch them. Okay. Last type of lure I'm going to be talking about here are called jigs. Again, they come in a variety of shapes and sizes, colors, like anything else. Jigs are often weedless. You can see the hook here in these feather type things here that cover the hook from weeds. They're great for fishing along the bottom. The way you fish them is you throw them out, your line's tied here, just kind of crank your rod in a little bit and twitch it up and down so the jig bobs up and down like that. It'll look like a crayfish or another small type of bait fish playing around on the bottom of the lake. And it'll attract bass, and hopefully you'll catch them like that. Well, that closes out this presentation on lures. I also want to mention that using live bait is a great way to fish too. If you get live minnows to fish with, you'll probably catch maybe even more fish than you would on plastic stuff. Because live fish are what the bass and whatever you're fishing for most likely to bite since that's what they feed on normally. But I hope you learned something here, and good luck fishing. Hi, here we are today at the Bloomsburg Town Park. There's a nice little pond here, so let's see if we can catch some sunnies. Hey, we got one here. It's like a small little bass. See if we can get the lure out here. Yeah, and there he is. Little bass. Toss him back in. Maybe a few years he'll get a little bigger and make a nice catch for somebody. Caught this bass on a Storm Wild Eye swim bait. Only about, inch and a half long. But it works great for little fish and big fish as well. Okay, here we are at a private pond in Union County. Often small private ponds can offer a lot of great fishing, so let's see if this is one of them. Right now we're using live minnows for bait. We'll see how much fish they can catch us here. Now it's a bass. There we got a nice bass. You can see it here. Caught using a live minnow. I'll toss him back in the water.
Man, they're nasty. They're just nasty. Alright, I gotta shut that up. There you got one. crappie.
A monster. What were you using? A minnow?
Minnows.
Yeah, they must eat a lot of minnows. Oh, did you see all the No, it's a small bass.
There we are. Nice little smallmouth bass. Catfish. Better not losing.
He's got too much energy. Listen to him. You hear him?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you dare. I feel like getting all full of mud. So.
Yep. Oh my God. Oh, it's a catfish. Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, look at this nice caddy. It's always a nice surprise when you're fishing for bass if you catch a catfish. Yeah, it's a little out of the ordinary, but it's nice. Well, that does it for fishing in Pennsylvania. You may pick up a fishing license at any sporting goods store in your area, such as Dick's, Cabela's, Gander Mountain, even at your local Walmart or your local sporting goods store. I hope this piqued your interest in the sport, and good luck fishing.